Corn. Good thinking, Chris. All right. Hey, looks like I'm live. Hello out there. My name is Chris. I'm the host of a show called Comic Tropes. And most of the time that is an edited review or analysis, maybe an interview, things like that. Every once in a while I do a live stream. I'm doing one now because I arguably foolishly agreed to do a drawing for Wizard Fanzine, which is something the fans of the channel Cartoonist Kayfabe put together. At least that's my understanding. And they needed a drawing for an article they have in their upcoming issue. They asked if somebody would volunteer to do it, and I did. I thought I was going to get to choose what I wanted to draw, but instead they said, no, we need a Batwoman from Kingdom Come. I've read Kingdom Come, but it was a long time ago that I read that. And I didn't really remember it all that well. Still don't, I guess I should say. But apparently there was a Batwoman in there from, what do you call it, the Fourth World, like, Apocalypse or something along those lines. So, yeah, I am going to do my best at illustrating Batwoman from the Kingdom Come story. And the direction they gave me on top of all that was make it look like Jack Kirby drew this in the 90s. I was like, I don't know. Like, I wish I had more time to talk about it. I really don't know exactly what they're going for. Hey, it's my sister. Hey, Jean. And there's RuneScape. Is that Austin? Let's see. And hello to Shane and Rishi. Hello, Groog, Iron Shell, Rad Graphics. Nice to see a bunch of people here. This is an impromptu, but I figured, you know what? If I had to draw, I may as well live stream it. That was my rationale. So I banged this out super fast. I've got to fine tune it. I've got to ink it, and I've got to color it. So this is going to be me getting pretty quick, but doing my best. And let me see. I think I need to zoom in on the drawing a little bit more so that you guys can actually see what I'm working on. Feel free to ask questions, but I really, instead of drawing this sort of for my fun, off to a great start. Obviously, I'm all there. My goal is not to draw this for myself or for fun. It's to draw it for sort of a project. So, with that in mind, bear with me here. I'm going to give this Batwoman very big bat ears. And hopefully that's her look. You know what? I mean, I figure I'm allowed a certain amount of interpretation here. We'll see. And, but you know what? I'm going to try to have fun. It's definitely a weird design. It's got a lot going on with it. But I'm going to do my best. Let's see what people are talking about in the chat. Bear with me. Shout out to Cosmic Lion Press for the new zine. Yes, that's who's publishing it. Getting my pens ready to join along with you. Great, yeah. Definitely draw with me. That's awesome. Would you consider an episode on Steve Gerber and his history? Absolutely. I would love to do that. Hello, Cameron. Just add square shoulders and lots of pouches. Oh, that's an interesting idea. What would you draw if you has the choice? If I had the choice, right now, I actually probably wouldn't draw anything. I'd finish up editing. I'm really close to wrapping up the next Comic Tropes. So, if you happen to be a Patreon supporter, or you've joined my YouTube membership. You can expect that pretty soon. I'm going to have that done pretty darn soon. Oh, there's a little tiny moth here. I'm trying to flick it away. Ain't this a sight for sore eyes? Well, I don't know. You know, let's just see what I can do. Because, boy, is this a complex bit of design. But I'm going to do my best. But I'm also going to be working pretty fast because I don't have a lot of time to commit to this. So you're going to see what I can do with a limited amount of time. Which is kind of interesting in its own right. Wow, a super chat. Thanks, some guy on his phone. Cool vids. Well, I do my best. I do my best. You could do cross-hatched crackle. Not sure it would look good, though. Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting idea. That does sound like a mix of Kirby and 90s, but just gonna sort of wing it here and see where this all takes me. I think I got the sort of overall pose and proportions very Kirby-esque. I'm satisfied with what I did there. And then I think it's just going to be in the rendering that I can make it 90s. That's my thought process as it stands right now. We shall see how that goes. But I'm thinking of taking some inspiration from maybe Mignola, who of course was influenced very heavily by Jack Kirby, and so maybe if I spot a bunch of blacks, that will give it sort of you know, not that Silver Age look, hopefully something closer to approximating the 90s, while also potentially saving me some time on just like over-rendering certain detail. Yeah, this is my thought process. I'll just talk that through. Members get early access. Cool. Yes. Yes. Hello, Mandela Butterfly. Let's see. I went to a Comic-Con 2 days ago. It was fun, but it felt like we are not in the pandemic anymore because no one was social distancing. I also went to a local Comic-Con a little over a week ago. It was fun. The tables were all spaced out. They'd gotten extra space for the convention itself, but I agree, no one was really social distancing. But I am vaccinated, and I'm just going to try to, you know, lay my faith in science, and hopefully that works out for me. We shall see. Got to get some crackle? Well, we'll see. I think the designs from Kingdom Come are meant to be a commentary on the 90s overly violent superheroes and superhero deconstruction in general. It definitely was, yeah, no question. In many ways, a satirization of such. The coloring is definitely what's going to intimidate me the most. But I've got some alcohol-based markers here that I can do my best with. Anybody else go to like a comic convention or anything lately? I mean, things are starting to open up around this country. It's an interesting time. Hopefully I gave her a delicate enough jaw while still maintaining some of that Kirby blockiness to this. let's see. I'd love to just like be able to tell you all some sort of a story. So if anybody can think of a good topic, maybe I've got a story I can talk about. How do you avoid burning out your creativity? Breaks is all I can think of, and it's a constant challenge, no question. No question is it a challenge all the time. But that's the only thing I've learned is that sometimes breaks can make a difference. Oh, wow, look at this. Oh, $100 Canadian. Good only in Canada, just so you guys know. Now, let's see. Thanks for all the great content. Your channel is one of a few that got me into collecting and reading comics just over a year ago. What I would like to know is what would you consider to be your white whale of comic collecting? Ah, funny that you should even call it a white whale because it is nautical based. My personal white whale these days is in 1975 in Japan. They made an adaptation of Jaws. There was a manga adaptation of Jaws. I love the movie Jaws. I just think it's really, really well made, and I like it. And so, yeah, like hopefully someday I'm able to come across an actual copy of that. So far, no luck. I've been to Japan a couple times. I always take a look at their comic book stores. You know, no luck yet, but maybe someday. Maybe someday. But that's my white whale is, oh, what was it from? I forget the name of the press off the top of my head. It's got an English name to it, too. But, who knows? Maybe someday I'll find it. Someday I'll find it. And that's as much as I can sing of that before YouTube claims it. Think of all the toques and crawlers you're going to be able to buy now. Oh, I hope so. This is a story all about how my life got turned upside down. Yes. Any books this week you're excited for? I'll be picking up Red Room and Beta Ray Bill myself. Those are the two that I'm picking up. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'm planning on picking up. I don't think so, though. Those might literally be the only two that I'm also picking up this particular week. Nothing else leaps into the mind. What to tell for a story time story? I had no idea they did a manga adaptation of Jaws. Yeah, it's definitely you know, Gekida, which is you know, for adults. It's pretty gory and violent. I've seen some images. There's a few scanned images online, but not the full comic, and I would really like to own that. So that's sort of my white whale. That I don't think that there's anything else that I'm particularly looking for right now. But you know, sometimes I'll come across a key issue that, you know, reminds me of, you know, something I love about comics. It could be more recent, it could be older, from like, you know, when I was first getting into comics. I bounce around, and you know, when I see something that excites me, if I can afford it, I might pick it up. I try to pick up like sort of a little bit of everything, because you never know what might inspire. I never know what might inspire me for an episode. Although lately, I think I really want to finally talk about Joe Kubert, Sergeant Rock, and his school, his kids. Like, I think I'd like to finally talk about Joe Kubert. So that could be coming up in the near future. We'll see. And I've also got a bunch of foreign comics that I sort of keep meaning to get to and haven't yet, but we'll get there. do collection omnibus. Yeah. Do you know much about Michael Golden? Kayfabe guys are talking about his art a lot, but I don't know much of his work. Oh yeah, I love Michael Golden. He was amazing in a bunch of like sort of the early 80s to mid 80s. Like his career spans longer than that, but I'm just saying, like, what I consider sort of the heyday when I was discovering his work. And I think the thing I like by Michael Golden the most might be his run on the first issues of The Nam by Marvel. Edited by Larry Hama. I can't quite remember the writer right now. Really talented artist who definitely inspired Todd McFarlane. Mark Tac, thank you for the super chat. Any good comic creator Chris comic tropes stories? Yeah, well, I definitely want to like me meeting a comic creator? Give me a sec. I will think about that. That has story potential. Doodoo Crash says, loving to add to that diversity of foreign super chats. Yes, I love that. Like it's I tend to get like pounds sterling and Canadian dollars, Australian dollars, rupees, all sorts of stuff. It's fun. It's fun to try to guess where it's coming from. Meeting creators. First of all, I've told this story before, I think, on a live stream, but one of the first people I ever went to see, not the first, but like among the first that I ever went to see was Todd McFarlane, and I was like just barely a teenager, and I was excited to see him, and I'd waited in line for a really long time, only to, and I'm sort of telling a condensed version, I finally got to his table, my friend and I actually, and he's like, ticket? And we're like, wait, what? We didn't know that you were supposed to get a ticket. How much are they? Oh, they're free, but like you're supposed to get a ticket so that, like we just know that you're supposed to be here. And I was like, oh my God, we've been waiting for like an hour and a half. It might have been 2 hours. I just don't remember that well, that part. I was like, we didn't know. We didn't get one. And he's like, sorry guys. Oh, that hurts so bad. That's specifically why we came to the convention, and we just like totally like whiffed it. We missed out. We didn't get like to get our books signed by Todd McFarlane. We were like 13 years old. We were so hurt. Oh, I was ready to give up on comics, honestly, in that like brief moment. I because it was such a devastating experience for like that age and all. But we went into, like, at least briefly see Todd speak. Like, we were literally the last person he was going to sign for before he went and did, like, a convention, like, panel. And while we were there, some guy approached us. He was like, hey, what are you guys here for? What are you into? It was an older guy, and we talked to him a little, and he really opened up to us. He could tell that we were sort of like upset and maybe not having a good time, and he just sort of tried to cheer us up. And it turned out he was a comic creator. He was telling us about like this Daredevil Punisher story that he was about to have come out from Marvel. And one of my biggest regrets is that I don't remember his name. I've tried to look up what comics came out at that time, and I'm just not sure. And it hurts because that guy really like just gave us such a positive experience after we just had such a negative one, that he really sort of reignited my passion for comics. And he deserves credit for keeping me invested in comics at a point where I was ready to just bail because I was so upset about like what had just happened and all. Who knows if I actually would have, or if like discovering other comics would have brought me back in, something like that. But yeah, that guy sort of saved my love of comics, and unfortunately I have no idea who he is. I hear Todd did that to Neil Gaiman, and that's why he sued Todd over Angela. True story, yeah. If you can do any comic tropes episode, what would they be? Well, I get to do anything that I want to do. So like all of them that I've done have been things that I want to do. No, I've never talked about Halo Jones. Anyway, I've met a lot of other creators. Just recently I was reminded was like 2005. I was at Wizard World in Chicago, that convention, and I was hanging out mostly with Kirkman, who was just starting to, like, you know, get like a little bit of notoriety. He hadn't done any of his Image stuff yet, I don't think. 2005. No, I think that was definitely pre anything that. Like, I think it was still just Battle Pope and stuff. Anyway, he had met Bendis, Brian Michael Bendis, fairly recently, and Bendis came over and was talking, and what was interesting was this was like right when Bendis was he wasn't really that huge yet, keep in mind. I mean, he was on the rise, Bendis was, but like he wasn't who he is today or who he became like later that year, basically. And he was talking to Robert about his plans for, and I was there too, but he was talking about his plans for Avengers and how he was going to be adding Spider-Man and Wolverine, and we were like, well, wow, those are like, you know, big characters that always have tons of stuff going on in their own titles. Are you going to keep them on the book? And he was like, no, like it's really just for like, you know, like a brief appearance, sort of get like all the big hitters on the Marvel team. They were going to be brief. This is what he was saying. And but I guess it must have been there for another conversation like a year later or something, because now I'm remembering two separate conversations, and I remember him telling us like that the sales ended up being so strong that Marvel was like, keep him on the team. He's like, okay, awesome, I've got a bunch of ideas. Anyway, who knows if he was joking or telling us the truth. I didn't know him well enough to know that, and I didn't really ask any follow-up questions myself, but I always have had that sort of in the back of my mind, like, oh wow, you know, like it wasn't always part of the plan, but I don't know for sure. I just remember what him telling us. It was interesting. Let's see, I can't see if I've centered this properly. Let me take a look. Okay, need to geez, those proportions aren't quite right now. What other good stories have I had there? LGBT representation in comics, especially the big two, is something you are interested in? I find it so interesting, from the seduction of the innocent to Claremont, clear metaphors to today. Didn't understand all of that, but I definitely think that representation is important to make it feel like, you know, a real world, a world that we all live in. I've got characters that I like that are part of LGBT, etc. I like John Constantine. I've always liked how he kind of slowly we learned that he was at least bisexual, if not more than that. I always liked that. Like, we just kept learning a little bit more about him at a time. Who knows if he would have become the John Constantine we knew if, like, writers had told DC right up front, like, oh yeah, this is what I plan on doing with him. Who knows if that would have flown. That new Avengers run certainly hooked me into the comic books back in high school. And hooked me into that comic. Got it. Yeah. What would your dream Avengers lineup be? There's a lot of Avengers that I really think are classics that do well on the team. You know, I think that, like, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor are sort of like the founders that I like to have on there. But I also think, like, Wasp and Black Widow and actually, well, not Captain Marvel, what's she called now? Photon are all pretty good female players, important players in their own right. Wasp has been an important leader over the years. I like Vision and Scarlet Witch feel like they're kind of just big team players. But I also like it when they like add new people so that like you can get like totally new dynamics. So I don't know. If I got it, it would depend on who's available. I definitely want to have like, as many sort of core members as possible. I wouldn't want to have more than say 9 members on a team at a time. And I'd probably just try to take a couple obscure or newer characters if it was up to me. Let's see. Care Bear Comics says, thinking of LGBT comic character history, I can think of Madame Fatal. Yes. Who, while not necessarily gay in the narrative, was heavily coded as such with his cross-dressing. Maybe so, but I also sort of wonder on that one specifically if it was more just like them just, that was a time in the Golden Age where they were just coming up with gimmicks, just something different and seeing where they could go. But I would not rule it out. I would not rule it out that the creators could have been trying to do something and like, code it, because that was about like all you could do at the time. When I picture the Avengers in my mind's eye, they look like Buscema drew them. Well, he was great. The one that comes to my mind first tends to be George Perez, just because that's like the eras that I read it. But yeah. Are there Chinese comics? Yes, absolutely. Manhwa. Not manga. Manhwa. Primarily from Hong Kong. And I've done an episode on that. If you look up my episode about Tony Wong, I recorded that when I was in Hong Kong. If you could put together a Comic Tropes X-Men team, who would make the team? 7-Eleven, Sergeant Spook, Captain Fearless, some of the weirdos. Dynamite Thor. There's at least 4 people that I would put together. I've definitely covered some weirdos in my episodes that I could think of 4 of them right off the top of my head, and I've probably done a few other weirdos. The Golden Age very much amuses me in terms of seeing publishers just throw ideas out to see what will hit, and a lot of it doesn't, but it's pretty funny to me watching them just do any sort of gimmick they can come up with, Oh, what if a guy had, spoon-based powers? What if a guy knew how to use the telephone really well? He works for the FBI, and he's good with telephones. How about a reporter who can hear radio waves? Yeah. Anyway, I will have my Berserk episode out shortly, down to the last little bit of editing. If I hadn't foolishly, in a way, said that I would draw this, I would be wrapping up that edit right now. That said, I'm in the Pacific Northwest, very close to Seattle, and Oh my god, the weather lately has been killer. Today, not quite as bad. Today was only like about 91 or so. Not too bad, but yesterday got up to more like 113 or so. It's pretty rough. It's pretty rough. Definitely hard to, even with air conditioning, it gets pretty warm and not super conducive to doing edits, to sitting in front of a computer. Have you seen the Godzilla Kaiju cards from Magic the Gathering? I've heard about them, but I haven't seen them. I did not read Dark Avengers. The premise sounded cool, but I just, yeah. There's definitely plenty of sort of mainstream superhero stuff that I just, it's not really for me. I just tend to like read the stuff that's either like, very, very, very well reviewed or, critically panned, and then I take a look to see if I have an extreme opinion on such things, because I just only have so much time to read, and so I try to devote it to stuff that will provoke a more extreme reaction. Ideally love, but sometimes disappointment or something. Redding, California, yeah, I'm sure that you had some pretty rough weather too. Yeah, I know New England's gonna get hot. My friends are all there. My favorite comic by Tom Scioli? I was about to say Godland, but honestly, I really liked his super bonkers take on G.I. Joe versus Transformers. Kind of threw everything at the wall, and it just sort of works because of how over the top it all is. I like that quite a bit. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Your commentary on the Indian superhero comics, which featured Batman and Superman and Spider-Man, was really fun. Oh, that's good to hear. I've gotten nothing but good responses from honestly a bunch of viewers from India. They were like, yeah, this particular one was pretty silly. Thanks for covering something from our neck of the woods. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't want to disparage the whole industry. It was just a really wacky comic, so I wanted to cover it. But hopefully I did that without trying to throw a whole industry under the bus, because I wouldn't want to do that. It was just, I found a really bonkers comic and I really wanted to talk about that one. Dark Reign storyline made me realize that Norman Osborn is a top 5 Marvel villain. He's got some potential. I wouldn't call him top 5. Let's see. Top 5. I mean, I'd start with either Magneto or Doctor Doom, but they're going to take my 1 and 2 spots. I think Dr. Octopus is a much more interesting character than Green Goblin. He's more of a real scientist as compared to a ruthless businessman. So he's sort of conflicted sometimes in his morality, and he's sort of the dark version of what could happen to Peter Parker if he gave up his morals, because Peter's a scientist. So I like Dr. Octopus. I think Loki has always been a good foil. So there's 4 right off the bat. What else do I really like? There's something scary about Red Skull. I like him too. Netflix Skeletor Inc. when? Not sure what that quite means. Sorry. Yeah, I would consider Devilman at some point. I think Go Nagai. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. I've never actually heard it said out loud now that I think of it. I think that he's an important creator worthy of discussion. Next time I visit Japan, I definitely want to have a topic of an important manga creator for when I'm there, and I'm not sure who that would be right now. In the past I did One Piece and Akira because they're both pretty important books. I don't know what I would do next. So I'll have to give that some serious thought. I've kind of covered most of my favorite mangas, including things like, Blade of the Immortal and My Hero Academia, and I'm about to do Berserk. Oh, you know what? I could at some point also do Lone Wolf and Cub. I respect that one. That one's pretty cool. And sometime I'm gonna have to get into Takeho. You know what? I forget how to pronounce his name, but the guy that's done Vagabond and Slam Dunk, stuff like that. That would be interesting to cover. Anyway, Shuzu Oshimi, maybe. Akira Toriyama. Oh, you know what? I would also go back and do another one on Osamu Tezuka. I think that, like, while I had a lot of fun doing that episode with my friend Jason, that, like, maybe that warrants a more serious episode at some point. I did sort of a silly episode where we were in LA, like, just sort of running around talking about, Osamu Tezuka comics, and I think it's a pretty funny episode in a lot of ways. I definitely had a great time, but maybe I could do a more serious analysis of Tezuka's work, because he's tremendously important to manga and to comics. Like, why limit it to just that? What about car animes? I've never seen anything like that. The only thing I know about Initial D is I think I played the video game, the arcade game, once or twice, but that was also a long time ago. So yeah, I don't know too much about that. Definitely a few blind spots in my my love of comics. That's what I love, though. There's always new stuff for me to learn about. Like I never feel like I know pretty much everything. I always feel like, the more I learn, the more I realize just how far I have to go with learning more and more about all this stuff. There's always more history, more influences. Always. It's amazing. Have you ever read the comic Crossed? You know what? Like, I think my girlfriend Chrissy bought a copy of that once because she was amused at how violent it looked. But I don't know if I actually read it. If I did, it didn't make a huge impression for some reason. I know it's a very gory comic. Is it a zombie comic? It's at least post-apocalyptic, but I don't know that I've ever really sat down and read that. Sorry. There's some things I'm, like, more aware of, but it doesn't mean that I know much about it. Sports manga are great. Slam Dunk and Haikyuu are top notch. Do you like Saga? I love Saga. I would love to talk about Saga, but I sort of am like waiting for it to at least return, if not get some more issues out, just so that there's a little more to cover. I talked kind of briefly in all things considered about Brian K. Vaughan. I admire his writing quite a bit. Yeah, I like his work. I really like Saga, and I also really like Why the Last Man. Some people have recently pointed out to me that it hasn't aged perfectly and that it's a little transphobic. I'd have to reread it because I honestly don't really remember that. But of course, why would I be looking at it from that angle? And it's an interesting angle to look at in retrospect. Like now, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I could learn something from it. What it either does right or wrong, if I view it through that lens. That's one thing I love about comics too, is that, like, even if you've read a comic before, maybe my look at it might still be interesting, because maybe we're taking a look at a point of view or an angle that you hadn't considered before, and you can appreciate a book that you already like on another level, or maybe it'll give you a new perspective on like, maybe why something deserves a second look. Maybe it's not as bad as you initially thought. At least that's the way I tend to approach criticism of things like, film and books and that. A Fletcher Hanks episode. Yeah, that's a great suggestion, Cara Bear. I mean, what a bonkers creator. Just somebody that went to the beat of his own drummer very, very much. I wouldn't really call him a very good artist, but he certainly was one that could convey some wild ideas. So an effective artist, certainly one that can provide a big response. So maybe maybe that is a good artist. Maybe it's more just like not what you would traditionally think of as intricate and detailed and powerful conventional storytelling. Comics and manga need to do way better on LGBTQ matters. Well, manga, Japan is definitely a little behind us there in a lot of ways. Maybe they're not as far behind when it comes to gay issues. They're a little far behind when it comes to empowering women. Like, if you read most comics from like the 90s or before, you're not going to come across too many female characters that have much agency in manga. That's definitely a little more recent for most. What 2010 comics by women are your favorite? Do you mean the year 2010 specifically? Because if so, what I'd have to do is really like look at a list. Honestly, even for the decade, I'd have to look at a list, and there's probably a bunch. The only one that leaps to mind is something. Well, no, a couple leap to mind as things that I remember really enjoying around that decade, but I could be a little early or a little late. Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi, great read, fantastic. Fun Home by Alison Bechdel. Those are both fantastic comics. I love them. I'd have to think harder about like superhero stuff. Like, that would take me a minute to like remember who did what when. Mandela Butterfly with a super chat. Loved your video on Nagraj. Do you have comics from other countries that you would like to review? Have you heard of the Filipino comic Tres? I've heard of it because there's a Netflix anime based on it. I haven't read or seen that yet. I do have comics from other countries that I've got, like, ones that I want to talk about include Asterix, excuse me. I said Asterix. Asterisk. Now I'm just going to get it wrong all night. I want to talk about that as far as, bande dessinées goes. I also want to talk about The Witcher. I've got some translated original comics in the original Polish, but that my friend who lives in Poland translated for me. So I'd really love to talk about that sometime. What else? I've got other things. I've got some like comics from like Argentina that would be worth talking about at some point. Hello, Akshu Rao. Glad that you're also an artist. Let's see. Have you read The Rook by William B. Dubé? No, I haven't heard of that one. Is that a book or a comic or what? I don't know. I'm afraid I just don't know on that one. The Netflix cartoon is pronounced Tracy. Okay, so that's the Filipino comic. There is a Filipino comic, I've mentioned this before, that I really want to review. They have something called Pocket Comics over there. They made one, like, not licensed or anything, but like of Rambo. They made some Rambo comics. Oh, I would love to get my hands on those. Haven't found it. Have I read any Tezuka manga? Yeah, I was just talking about it. I did an episode about him. I've read a bunch of stuff. Of course, Astro Boy, Buddha, what else? Blackjack. Yeah, I've definitely read Osamu Tezuka stuff. He's amazing. Just amazing. Easy to read, like comprehend, I mean. Captivating characters, unique, beautiful designs. Yeah, Tezuka is a god, you know, in the world of comics, or specifically manga. He's amazing. He's something special. Yeah. Japan doesn't even recognize same-sex relationships legally. Oh, they don't? So they are a little further behind than I realized. I didn't know that. It's a comic from a magazine called Eerie and Dark Horse. The art is by Lee Bermejo. Oh, he's very talented. That's cool. That's cool. Any plans for more Transformers episodes? Never say never. I grew up being a big Transformers fan. That's why, you know, like there's the episode about the comic I made when I was 10. Like, I made a 60-page Transformers comic when I was only 10 years old. And that was fun to talk about. I only covered the first 30 pages, but there wasn't really that much demand, so I don't think I'll ever get to the other 30 pages. But yeah, like I like Transformers. I don't know. You know, I read the Marvel comics when I was growing up. And they're not that great. They're okay. They're not great. And I don't know that I've got that much to say about them, really, now that I think of it. Because I did one episode about them. I don't know if I'd have two in me. Yeah, I'd have to think about it. Should people not read a comic if it's not available in their country? If it's not available in their country, no, sure. If you like traveled or something, of course you should buy comics from other countries. Why wouldn't you? Been binging your videos again, and thanks to you, I've read some comics, starting with Daredevil the Man Without Fear, and then Spawn. Also, in your episode where you spilled tea on yourself, did that hurt? No, that was fake. That was fake. That was just water. The steam is all special effects. I'm not going to hurt myself in an episode. I hope nobody thinks that I'd just spill boiling water on myself for a laugh. I don't know. Good question. Speaking of Philippine comics, why do you think the Philippines have produced so many accomplished comic artists? I don't know. That is an interesting question, isn't it? Like, why have they produced so many? You know, it's a very populous country, so, you know, I guess, you know, and there's a lot of English spoken there, so they've probably just been exposed to American and British comics very easily, and I don't know, that it is interesting, isn't it? But I'm going to at some point do an episode about the Filipino invasion. That's just the name for it, when a bunch of people came to work in the American comics industry. So I will talk about that at some point. some YouTubers would spill boiling waters on themselves for a laugh. I just didn't think it was necessary. In terms of comics, who inspires you the most? Boy, you know, it changes. That's all I can say. It changes all the time. Sometimes it's a guy like Will Eisner. Other days, you know, it's Jack Kirby. And other days it's like modern people like Daniel Warren Johnson, or indie creators like the cartoonist Kayfabe Boys. By the way, I love calling them boys, even though like they're not necessarily like little boys. I do get a kick out of calling them boys. Look at that, DKK. What's that? Some like German or Kroner or something? Do you have a schedule for streaming? I gotta know. No, I should, but I don't. This one was definitely impromptu. I hope I put that in the title. I think I did. By the way, this is not looking perfect, so this will be something I probably touch up in Photoshop now that I look at it. At some point, it might become regular. And if it did, I'd probably be doing it regularly on like the second channel that I have, which I don't really use much. But at some point, I'll probably do that. But for now, no. Any chance of getting a Meta Barons review someday? It's possible. I definitely have wanted to talk about the work of Alejandro Jodorowsky in comics. I think that would be worthy of discussion, so that is something I'd like to do. Where's the Berserk episode? Working on it. Working on it very, very soon. I would say that I'm more than 70% of the way done in terms of overall editing. It's been recorded. I've gathered all the images that I need. I've edited into order. I'm just putting in the images and formatting them so that there's some, like, you know, visual interest. I think that like my patrons and YouTube members should probably have it within a day or so, and then everybody else a few days after that. But yeah, if you ever want early access to anything, I upload that for my patrons and my YouTube members if you're at the $2 or higher subscription levels. You get early access to videos. And occasionally like small bonus episodes too. Read anything great this month? This month? Last month, the great thing was definitely Monster by Barry Windsor Smith. This month, anything great? I've read good stuff. I don't know if I've read great stuff. I have enjoyed Immortal Hulk. I've enjoyed Red Room. I've enjoyed... what else have I enjoyed? I've enjoyed some other stuff. All of a sudden I'm blanking now that you ask. I know I've read a bunch of other stuff that I've liked. It's late. I've worked all day. It's hot. So my thinking is definitely a lot slower than typical. I remember, man, this is so mean, but in like junior high, there was this one kid that was so annoying, and it was just because he was dumb. He wasn't like mentally slow. He was just dumb. You know, you ever meet just a dumb guy? Oh, he drove me nuts just because he'd slow down all these classes that like some of us had to take. Like, you know, what am I even thinking of? Like, yeah. He'd like mispronounce candy bars. I remember he'd call them like Babby Ruth and Wooderfunger, and I don't think he was doing it as a joke. I think he legit just like didn't know how to pronounce certain candies because he was always talking about candy. Oh, he drove me nuts. Any plans for a potential Dan Slott's Spider-Man run episode with its ups and downs? I think that would probably be a good idea, the chef. I think that, because it was a long run, you know, that was a long run, like one of the absolute longest, maybe the second longest or something. He wrote a lot of issues, and yeah, even if you don't like him, he definitely influenced Spider-Man in a lot of ways, because I mean, he oversaw stuff like Spider-Verse, which, you know, now the movies have gone nuts with. I liked his Superior Spider-Man run quite a bit. I thought that was awesome. At the time, people were freaking out, going like, oh my god, he killed Peter Parker. And it's like, have you guys really not read superhero comics in the last 30 years? Like, they always go back to the status quo. If you don't like it, just don't read it, but just be patient. It'll go back to the status quo eventually. Wow, Chris, thank you. Let's see. Love the channel. Just wanted to show some support. Keep up the great work. Is there anything you wish you could see more of in comics? Yeah. Some of the genres that I like that are like less represented. I would love to see more crime comics, romance comics, sci-fi comics. Because they're out there, but I'd just love to see even more, you know? Yeah. That's what I'd like to see more of. I still, you know, keep a finger in superhero books, but they're not like what I care about like every single day, like that I'm super passionate about. Like, I tend to be more passionate these days about I mean, I don't know how to describe it. More adult genres, maybe? It's hard to describe. Oh, I know what I've read this month that's great, but it isn't new. I've been rereading Berserk because I'm doing the episode on it. That's something I've been like rereading almost all of, and I love it. I love that story. I love it. It just gets better and better as it goes along. At least art-wise, it gets better and better. I really love the Golden Age, which is the second arc out of like the 5 arcs. Anyway. Somebody asked, like, what have I read that's great? That stands out. Any thoughts on Alex Ross? He's very talented. He's very talented. I'll definitely do an episode about him at some point. You know, I wouldn't say he's like a personal big favorite of mine, but I respect him, and sometimes he's capable of doing some really good work. I liked Kingdom Come, and I liked I like his covers right now for Immortal Hulk. I like those as well. Yeah, he's very talented. He's very talented. What are you expecting from Spider-Man Beyond? I don't know what Spider-Man Beyond is, I'm afraid. Sorry. Is that a comic, a TV show, like a cartoon, or what? Don't know Spider-Man Beyond, I'm afraid. Do you think Toby and Andrew will be in No Way Home? I think I do think that they will be. I think it makes sense. I personally think that this next phase for the Marvel movies is going to all be about the multiverse. I think that Ant-Man will have Kang, and time travel is sort of like parallel timelines, parallel dimensions. Loki clearly is setting this up with the TVA, Time Variance Authority. I think that they're going to establish that, yes, there's a multiverse. We know that Doctor Strange is called Multiverse of Madness. Spider-Man at least has villains, like from actors that have been in previous movies. So, yeah, I strongly suspect that the next phase will strongly deal with the multiverse. We know What If is a TV show that's about to come out, so I think that that's what's sort of next. Is the next big thing is all going to be multiverse cuckoo-ness. And it'll let them basically, if they ever feel like it, like sort of do hard or soft reboots. What do you think about woke comics? I guess I don't even know what a woke comic is, so you'd have to define that. Have you ever considered starting an Indiegogo comic? I have considered that a little bit, actually. I think that, because I'm in the process of, writing some of my ideas for comics so that I could hire an artist and then I would pitch it, and if for any reason a publisher didn't pick it up, I think that I could definitely crowdfund it at this point. So yeah, I do think about that. I've watched a little more than half of Sweet Tooth. It's very good. It's very good. Batwoman has these little underarm wings that are kind of like Spider-Man's. It's so funny. And her dog has bat wings. It's yeah. It's funny. Let's see. It would be interesting if they decided to have 616 characters show up in the MCU movies. Yeah, I guess the biggest trick would be sort of like, how you make it obvious that those are like the comic book versions, as compared to just another live action version that's close to the comics. But yeah, that would be potentially a lot of fun. Yeah, I think woke comics may just be a Comicsgate term. I'm not sure. I don't really plug myself into that world. If anybody's watched my shows, you know that, basically, I'm just all about celebrating what is possible with the medium of comics and trying to analyze what creators do well, where there's opportunity for improvement, and then in rare cases taking a look at, sort of a bad comic, trying to have a little fun, but, trying to also point out some of the things that they do well, not just trying to crap all over it, because that's not fun or funny. But yeah. Did you read Something is Killing the Children? I read the first trade paperback. I like it, and I have the second one. I just haven't been able to get time to watch it yet. Hopefully soon. getting Gila vibes from Hela. Hela? Gila. I can't remember. You know what? There is some that, I mean, she's got like the big headdress thing. I don't know. Anybody see any good movies lately? I watched Censor last night. That's like a British sort of art house horror movie. It was actually pretty good. It was effective. I'm glad that I can go to the theater and feel kind of safe about that these days. That's nice. Do you read at work? No. When I'm at work, I pretty much have to work, so I don't have time to sit down and read. Well, except for my lunch breaks, I might like bring a comic sometimes to read there, or a book. Remember last stream I asked you about Tatsuki Fujimoto? Well, simply put, I consider him pretty much a Go Nagai 2.0. Bit exaggerated, I know. He's a Shonen Jump mangaka, after which it gets raunchy. Okay. I rewatched the Tim Burton Batman flicks. They mostly hold up. You know, they at least have an internal consistency to themselves, but, yeah, I think I ultimately prefer the Nolan take on Batman, I think. Watched Soylent Green today. Oh, fun. That's cool. Lived any good books lately? Lived any good books? Don't quite get that one. I watched The Long Halloween. I didn't realize that they made a, I guess I'm presuming, animated version of that. Long Halloween's a pretty good story. I did an episode about that. Yeah, it's pretty good. Joe Kelly's Deadpool run. You know, I think I did in the 90s read some of that. It strikes me that, like, that's the only version I read until, like, you know, a few years ago, reading a version by Jerry Duggan and Brian Posehn with art by Tony Moore, which is mostly why I read it. When I met JR at a convention, he said that he gave no credence whatsoever to talent and that all comic artistic ability came from training and practice. I don't know if I'd go that far. That's interesting. I definitely think anyone that practices and trains does get better, and you could have a lot of talent, but if you're not sitting around training and practicing, you're not going to progress, you're not going to get any better, so it's, you know, all futile. But I don't know that I could quite go as far as him. But you know what? JR's the pro, and I'm not, so, yeah, it's interesting. Alright, let's see if I... Now that I've inked a bunch of this, I'm going to zoom out a little, clean this up, and... I'm going to try to start adding some color to this. Because I got to get this done. It's already getting pretty late. And I was really hoping to have some time to potentially wrap up editing the next episode tonight. Let's see. Questions, comments? Halloween Kills is the upcoming Michael Myers movie. Yeah, I saw that trailer. I'll probably watch it because I just watch horror, so yeah, I'll see that. What pen are you using for inking? I'm using several tonight, actually. I started primarily with a Tombow brush pen. I also have some Pigma Sakura brand brushes, and then I've got some Microns. Tonight is all about speed, so I don't really have time to utilize brushes or quills, like even if I wanted to. I just don't have that kind of time for this project. I really wish I had more time. Like, when I agreed to do it, like, I didn't realize that I was agreeing to such a tight deadline. They basically, like, I accepted this like 2 days ago, and then they were like, and we need it by the end of the month. I was like, really? You're soliciting help and you need it like that fast? I was like, yeah, all right. I mean, I can do it. It's not going to be my strongest work. Like, if I had a little more time, I definitely could have done these hands a hell of a lot better. What I'll probably do is I'll do this as best I can right now, and then I'm going to go into Photoshop and probably redraw them digitally just so that they like don't look like absolute ass. That's what happens when I'm like hurrying, you know? I just don't have time to map it all out or fine-tune it. Frustrating. Because I know I can do better if I've got more time. I know I can. But don't always have time. All right. Are you self-taught when it comes to drawing? Yeah, self-taught. Otherwise, it would be a lot better. Let's see. Bear with me a moment. I'm going to... Well, I thought I had a reference of what this character looks like on my computer, but I don't. So, I'm going to pull it up. I know she's primarily yellow, and I want to say purple. Kingdom Come. Let's see what we got here. And then I've got some markers here. And hopefully giving it some color will help add it, like, you know, some personality. Spider-Man Beyond will be Ben Reilly taking over Spider-Man. Ew. Really? That doesn't do much for me. Yellow and sort of more of a pinkish purple. Go with these to start with. And then, do I have a flesh color? I think this is going to be the best option there. What's this one called? Oh, do these not have names? I'm using knockoff Copics. These here, see? I've got like all these, but these are knockoffs. They will look just as good for the short term, but they don't have like the same archival quality or something. I'm going to... I'm looking for sort of a scrap piece of paper that I don't mind ruining. I'll pretend this super quick sketch of Iceman is supposed to be flesh colored. And see if that's... Oh, that's probably too bright. Let's see what else I got. Maybe this. Ben Reilly's Spider-Man had his day during the Clone Saga. Now it feels like a retread. he had his day even before the Clone Saga. Oh, this is so pink. I don't know if I really like that either. Between the two, the first one looked more like flesh color than that. Alright. Barring a better option... Oh, wait. I do have... Oh, good. I lucked out. I've got an actual Copic in flesh color, and she doesn't have much flesh to color, so I am in luck. Yeah, that's the right color. Thank goodness. A lot of people like the Clone Saga because that just happens to be where they started getting into the Spider-Man comics, and I can totally respect that. It's just that for me, it was what sort of burned me out on the Spider-Man comics, and it kind of got me to stop reading them for a while. Iceman becomes the Flesh, yeah. It's 1:10 a.m. here in Jersey. Oh, yeah, it was a last-minute decision to draw this late, so that's nice of you to join me, considering the relatively absurd hour. Apparently, I don't know too much about this version of Batwoman, but apparently, from what I was told, she's from Apocalypse, which is kind of amusing. "3 p.m. in Australia." Hello, Frankie. Man, I was originally supposed to have been in Australia by now because Chrissy and I had gotten some fantastically priced plane tickets to visit Oz, and then the pandemic happened and our tickets were canceled. Oh, that hurt. I don't know when I'll get another opportunity where both time and money line up. We'll see. Have you seen B-Mask Fantastic Four video? I don't know what that is, no, so I didn't see it. Let's see. I feel like I'm totally confused on like how this mask works. Oh, it's mostly yellow. Alright. Huh. Weird. What's your favorite Kingdom Come redesign? Interesting question. Obviously appropriate for what I'm doing right now. Let's see. My favorite... I did like that the Flash was just always nothing but a blur, that he couldn't like stay still. I thought that that was an interesting idea. I thought that like Batman in his, neck brace was kind of cool, and like I was like, yeah, that makes sense that he'd be all sort of crippled essentially from his years of fighting crime. He wouldn't know when to hang it up, and so if he was still around, he'd probably be all messed up from the years of fighting. I like that. Oh, wow, a super chat. Let's see. Nala15 the artist says, "You didn't melt in the Pacific Northwest heat. Welcome to the club. Phew, and loving the inks. What's your camera setup for art streaming, by the way? It's great." that's kind of you to say. I need to upgrade it at some point because honestly, all it is are two very basic webcams, like webcam 1, webcam 2. Nothing. I think they're both Logitechs. Not like 4K or anything, or you guys would be able to see what I'm illustrating here in much more crisp detail. But for now, it's what I got. And you make do with what you got. I'm just going to color in all the sort of purpley bits, and then I'm going to go to town with the yellow. What an interesting color scheme, yellow and sort of a purple for Batwoman. That's kind of bizarro bonkers, huh? Very different than, like, you know, grays and blues and blacks. I definitely could not listen to audiobooks in my headphones during work. No. Unfortunately, my customers need my full attention, so I can't slack or goof off or anything like that when I'm working. Time 10. I'm getting reminded by my phone that I haven't taken my Duolingo lesson for the day. I've been doing that for like over 2 years straight now. It's pretty late in the day, but fortunately, my phone reminds me so that I don't neglect it. I've got a little bit of time still. I think I can finish this. I can definitely finish this before midnight because I don't want to be up all night doing this. I'll be honest, I have lost a little bit of my passion for this. I want to do a good job because it's going to represent me, but I don't like being rushed. I don't like that. Like, I wish I had more time. And, like, tonight is literally the only time I had. Otherwise, I was I was basically just working. I just... Ugh. I recently finished reading Invincible. What other Robert Kirkman comic would you suggest? Well, if you liked his superhero stuff, I would definitely suggest his other superhero books. Capes, Astonishing Wolfman, Tech Jacket, or Astounding Wolfman. So I think that, like, if that's what you liked, I'd read his other, you know, related superhero books. Invincible Universe, Brit. You know, it all takes place in the same world. And then if you just are starved for more Kirkman and for some reason Walking Dead isn't your thing, because that's going to be, you know, his next biggest overall title in terms of, like, volume, then I think that Oblivion Song is probably the way to go. One thing I can say for sure is that for the amount of time he's been in the industry, Robert has created a lot. He definitely works hard. There's no matter what you think of him, trust me, he works very hard. He is always working on multiple things at a time. Thank you, Tsuki. Appreciate the kind words. What Duo language are you mastering? I wouldn't say I'm mastering it, but I've been studying Japanese, just trying to at least have a few more basics. But I think I'm at the point where I just want to take an in-person or hopefully in-person, maybe remote class and see what I can learn from that. I think that'll speed everything up at least. Hello from Brazil, Quadrinos Nazareta. put a... I lost my train of thought. Hello. I don't know what hello in Portuguese is. Sorry. I just realized that I just don't know that. Can you say something to us in Japanese? Itadakimasu. Let's eat. I don't know. I'd sort of need to know. Oh yeah, Firepower. Firepower is fun. That's a good Kirkman book. Yeah, I like Firepower. Let's see what we got here. We're gonna start laying in some yellows. This costume is primarily yellow, so let's get that in. See if that gives this any more dimension. And then, if it needs it, I can always go in with some light gray Copics to add a little more dimension to everything we have. Oh, and then I just remembered I still have to scan this and like fix up the hands. There's still plenty to do on this piece, even though I felt like I was approaching closing time on this. Ola. Okay, not Ola, but Ola. Hajime mashite. Krisu desu. Nice to meet you. I'm Chris. Oh, geez. Have you read Spawn Universe or Spider-Man Spider's Shadow? I've read Spider-Man Spider's Shadow, and it's very fun. I like it. It's a what-if book, but like a more prolonged take on it. It's sad, you know? The idea that, like, Peter could let himself fall apart like that. I'm not convinced that the 616 Spider-Man would fall apart like that, even if he lost his Aunt May to, you know, a supervillain. I just don't think he would sort of turn dark like that, but it's plausible enough that it lends itself to a good story. Yeah, I like it. I've done an episode on Black Sad. Of course I've heard of it. And what you're calling it a Spanish noir. It's by Spanish creators, but it is published by a French publisher. So technically, it's a French comic first, because it's published in French by French publishers. It's just got Spanish creators. But yeah, I like Black Sad. I think it's a gorgeous looking book, and often has pretty good crime stories, and I like crime stories. If you could write a Spider-Man story, what would it be about? I don't think I've ever really sat around to think up a Spider-Man story, to be honest. I tend to instead brainstorm my own ideas. You know, if Marvel, for some reason, contacted me and offered me an opportunity to write, I'm positive I could pitch ideas to them of something that, you know, hadn't quite been done yet, that still maintains the integrity of their characters. I'm sure I could do that. I have no doubt. But I don't really sit around coming up with my own what-if scenarios for existing characters. If I start to, I just go like, well, how could I change that and make it, you know, mine, instead of like, you know, too derivative. I'm like, what's the core of the story that I'm actually thinking of here? What's the emotional thrust of it? Or what does the character go through? What's the world? And then I'm like, that's more important than, like, you know, whether that happens to Spider-Man or Doctor Strange or something like that. actually, this may have been done at this point, but I did actually always have one idea for a Doctor Strange story, which is that, like, somebody else magically heals his hands, and so he's, like, now a little conflicted as to, like, whether he should go back to being a surgeon, even part-time, you know, because couldn't he help a lot of people that way? I think that could be, you know, an interesting story. But it's also, I'm like, you know what? I feel like somebody else out there has maybe told that story. But if they haven't, it's been documented here. That's my idea for a Doctor Strange story. Is somebody heals his hands, somebody, like, sort of mysterious, you know, it's magic, but, like, his hands are healed, and he could go back to work. Would he? That's the question. Have you kept up with Donny Cates' Venom run, and are you excited for Venom 2? I didn't keep up with it, but I did pick up the last issue and read that, and I kind of got where everything went. I liked what he did with Maker. I thought that was pretty cool building up of a new villain. And am I excited for Venom 2? I wouldn't say excited is quite the right word. I'm mildly interested. I thought that the first one was going to be a disaster, and I would not call it a disaster. I would say that it was okay. It was okay. That's what I'd give it, is that it was okay. Maybe that's even a little too kind. It was decent. Which I didn't expect. But it also didn't, like, it just wasn't quite what I want out of Venom, because, you know, he's a Spider-Man character, at least his origin, I think, is. And I think when you take that away, I don't know. I want him to evolve past being, you know, a Spider-Man hating goofball, but I also don't want I don't want him just existing in a vacuum. I don't think the costume in the movie looked as interesting visually as sort of just this black blob. Yeah, his face was right, but, you know, without that, like, spider icon in the middle, there's nothing to break it up. There's nothing, there's no, yeah, it was a little bit of a letdown there. But who knows? Maybe the next one will be even more fun. You never know. Have it be Dr. Druid that does it in my story. Yeah, Dr. Druid, isn't he a bad guy? Like, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if they ever redeemed him or anything, but the last I ever saw of Dr. Druid in the 90s, he had become a villain. Or had, like, been revealed to have always been a villain. Dr. Druid is lame. He does not look cool. He's like a bald guy running around in a, like, literally just a bathrobe. And just really can't make that cool. Either put on some clothes or work out, but if you're going to call yourself a superhero, just don't be a thin bald guy in a bathrobe. That's not going to inspire anybody. Are you familiar with the absurd popularity of Disney comics in Europe? Yeah. Even during World War II, Italy wasn't able to stop bringing over Mickey Mouse comics because their people wanted them so much. That's amazing. One of the Axis powers was still trying to bring in Mickey Mouse comic books. Just wild. I'm only 1.5 hours late, but I made it. I wouldn't say you necessarily missed anything to this particular one. You know, I'm just sort of trying to bang out as quickly as possible what is essentially an unpaid commission, which I normally wouldn't do, but I do respect what these guys put together with the first issue of Wizard, and I like where their hearts are at, celebrating comics. So I was like, yeah, I'll do this. I'd be more excited to have done it if I could have either A, chosen my own character to draw, or B, had a little more time so that I could, you know, spend more time and do a better job on it. I would like to be a little more excited about what I'm doing right now. I hope I'm doing an okay job. I don't want to just be a hack and just like, you know, because I'm not doing it for the money or anything, and I'm not doing it for like fame, but I'm doing it because I think that the guys that made the first issue of the Wizard fanzine did a really good job, and I like where their hearts are at. So hopefully this helps. Wizard got relaunched? No. I said fanzine. It's Wizard, Wizerd. You can look that up. Wizard fanzine. But it is sort of a magazine in that vein, celebrating comics. Definitely a little more of an indie bent to it, which I totally respect and love. So that's a big part of why I'm willing to do this. But obviously not exclusively, because what character am I drawing for them? A mainstream DC character, so yeah. Do you prefer Dark Horse Star Wars comics or Marvel Star Wars? Yeah, overall the Marvel ones. I do. I read the very first several Dark Horse things back in the 90s, and that was a big deal at the time because, you know, we hadn't gotten any Star Wars content for a long time. There were no plans for any additional movies. There were just the 3 movies. They weren't even making the toys anymore. All of a sudden, Timothy Zahn came out with a book out of nowhere. You know, like there was no other Star Wars stuff for a long time, guys. Like, it's not at all like what it is now, although those first few movies were beloved. You know, they were huge hits and people loved them, but we didn't think we'd get any more Star Wars. And then they gave us a book, and then there was those cool comics, Dark Empire. What a great premise. The Emperor came back through cloning technology. We'd heard of the Clone Wars in the first movie, but we didn't know what clones were in Star Wars. And he and Luke felt that the only way to take him down was to join the dark side so that he could understand him and then get out. And that proved almost impossible. It was really exciting at the time. But these days, I think that they Marvel ones I'm way more into. I think that they're more accurate, but they've got like more to draw on. I tremendously admire everything you do with this channel, says Little Raven. I've learned so very much and enjoyed every second of it. Bravo, good sir. What kind words! Thank you so much for the super chat and the kind words. You made my day. That's just really, really kind of you. I appreciate it. Sincerely. So anyway, what I like about today's is I discovered, I don't read all the Star Wars comics, very few in fact, but I have read Dr. Aphra. I think that character is funny and interesting. Like a character that sort of messed up has lots of internal inherent conflict, and it makes her interesting. She goes in unexpected directions. So I really like Dr. Aphra. That said, oh my god, is it impossible for me to find volume 5 of her trade paperback? And I was like, why is it so hard to find one particular volume of a trade paperback? And it's probably not that it's that one in particular, it's that I'm looking for it right now. Marvel is, some of you may have noticed this, some of you may not be aware, but Marvel is not currently printing really any of its trade paperbacks. Why not? Well, they're about to switch publishers. They're not publishers, distributors. They're about to switch from Diamond, who has a humongous backlog of their catalog, in their warehouses, like they're storing all their trade paperbacks and stuff for whenever a store wants to order one, and they're going to Random House. Now, Marvel has seen DC go through something like this, and they know how expensive it would be to transfer, will be, to move all of that inventory that they own from one distributor's warehouse to another. So, they're not interested in running up those costs. Therefore, they're really just not printing copies of their trade paperbacks, no matter how in demand they are. So, a little frustrating, to be honest. Like, if there's anything you've been looking for and you can't find it anywhere, it's because Marvel's like, yeah, we're going to wait until, like, we're at our new distributor's warehouse. Like, why print off all this inventory only to then just, like, almost immediately, like in a couple months or something, pay an astronomical fee for it to be shipped? Which I sort of get, but it's frustrating if there's anything you're looking for. Like, I'm currently looking for one of their books, and I cannot find it anywhere. Nobody has it in stock right now. I'm sure somewhere out there there's a comic book store that just has, a copy or copies lying around, but none that I've come across lately. Hey, cat. The industry is just trying to change for the better. Yep, they're trying, and we shall see what happens. I think, it's gonna be to the industry's advantage that Marvel is hooking up with a massive distributor like Random House. That carries with it a lot of weight, and Random House can get into so many more places than just a comic book store. So you could definitely potentially see comics in more places, in a year or two. And if so, maybe the prices can also go down because, there's always economies of scale. And if a company was printing more copies, it costs them less for each issue to make, and eventually they can sort of share those savings with customers. So right now, it's hard for comics to be super affordable for people because, all things considered, they're not making that many copies because it isn't getting out to a big enough readership. But if you could make comics cheap enough that they were considered more disposable entertainment, I think you'd get a lot of new readers. You get more women, you get more adults, you get more kids if it was more affordable. So that's the trick. We shall see what happens. Have you seen the Dark Age Marvel comic that's coming? No, I don't know what that is. I'm sorry. I have not seen that. Hey, Bean. I have many friends into the MCU movies, but I hardly know anyone who reads comics, period. Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. But I think that there's always potential for that to change. comics as a medium won't go away. So eventually, someone will find a way to make them more affordable. And the intellectual property isn't going anywhere. I mean, they're going to keep making movies and toys about all this stuff, so that's not going anywhere. Stores like Five Below sell DC multi-packs. I've heard about that, yeah. Yeah, I see what you're talking about, Cara Bear. I definitely agree that it has some similarities to the Jessica Drew Spider-Woman costume. I definitely see some similarities there. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but I see it. Certainly the underarm webbing does a lot, and then the fact that there's, like, you know, an upper facial mask that's kind of the same thing, and then like a full bodysuit, there's a bunch of yellow in it, not quite red, but a reddish color. There's definitely plenty of comparisons to be made there. So I'll finish coloring Batwoman in a second, then I'll color the Bat Hound thing that she's on, and then I'll see about adding extra detail and extra shading color-wise. Because they did again tell me that it should have sort of a 90s, it should be like a Jack Kirby pose with 90s aesthetic, and I was like, I don't know exactly what that means, but I'll do my best. Thoughts on Tom Green? Ooh, not sure that I really have any, to be honest. Haven't heard it from him in, it seems like, decades, to be honest. What does webbing have to do with bats? You know, I'm not sure that it's supposed to be webbing, even though that's what it sort of looks like. I think it's just supposed to be bat wings, and it just happens to mirror visually the sort of wings that we've seen with Spider-Man and Batwoman. I think. I don't know. Pulling out some warm grays. And we shall see how this goes. What do you think of the current MHA arc? You know, the current one is not my favorite in My Hero Academia. I prefer when they focus on all the students, like, you know, learning. I think Deku is a pretty good protagonist, so I like to see him at the forefront. And whenever they sort of gather all the heroes to fight like a big villain threat, I sort of lose a little bit of interest, because to me the main hook, the main appeal is definitely the students learning. It reminds me of like New Mutants, in the best ways when it's done well. I like New Mutants, or at least I should say I did when I was growing up. I really liked that. Have you ever seen or heard the YouTuber named Salazar Knight? Nope, sorry. What's he doing? He's currently reviewing every Batman comic. That is a big undertaking. It was cool to see you drop in on the Toy Galaxy stream the other day. Oh, yeah, I did. That was fun. I like that show. I don't watch it all the time, but I think that Dan seems to be a pretty likable host. He seems very knowledgeable about the things that he decides to talk about. I don't really collect a bunch of toys, but I like them, you know? Like, I liked them as a kid. I didn't have a lot of toys as a kid either, like, but I like them. That's funny that you saw me there. Do I have this centered okay? Let's see. Yeah. Are you reading the current Nightwing arc? No, sorry, I'm not. But is that written by Tom King? Because I've been hearing a lot of good things about Tom King's writing over the last couple of years. Alcohol-based markers blend pretty well. That's one nice thing about them. They tend to even out. They don't like leave lots of spots or anything like that, and you can blend them a bit. So it's kind of fun. It's not quite like painting, but it's it blends more than, say, like crayons or pencils. So that if you want to go back and add some like darker colors to like give it more depth, you can, which is nice. How much should I pay you for you to make a video covering the Danish comic Valhalla? You know, I've heard people talk about that book before. Must be pretty popular. It's not really about paying me. It's just about me finding the time to cover things, you know? I mean, I'm only one person. I don't have any help on this show, you know, like editors or assistants or anything like that. So, I can only go so fast or I'd burn out, because I've also got my full-time job to balance. Like, I sometimes I think about, like, you know, could I do YouTube full-time? And it's good income, but it doesn't give you benefits, you know, health insurance or anything. So if I resigned from my full-time job, now I'd have to pay for my health insurance here in America, and that's pretty expensive, to be honest. And I feel like, you know, if I did that, like, it kind of cancels out, like, you know, after I pay my bills and my health insurance, I definitely wouldn't have too much money to do much of anything with. So it's not very realistic right now that I could do this full time. If I did it full time, then I think I could cover more things, you know? I would probably stream regularly. I'd set a certain day because this would be my job, and I'd be like, hey, this is the day where I stream. This is the day where I post an interview. This is the day when there's a new Comic Tropes episode. This is a day where I just do quick reviews of what I read this week and what I thought of it. So there's definitely things like that that I could potentially do if I was doing it full time, but it just doesn't make monetary sense at this point. Like, if I could hire an editor to like really to make my life easier, that would also be something where I could generate more content. But, you know, a good editor costs quite a bit. I've looked into it. I've talked to people that are professional editors for like other YouTube channels, and it isn't cheap, and it shouldn't be. Like, they provide really good work. The tricky thing in a way to editing a Comic Tropes episode isn't even just fitting it all together. It's the fact that the stuff I review will often have so many images you have to source from comics and real life. It's very time consuming, honestly. And I just don't know who I could trust to get that right. To gather all that stuff is a lot of work. Not economically viable. Exactly, Raul. The wolf looks like it has half a mustache. Well, I'm going to add a lighter gray in here, and then in some places some darker gray. But, you know, a lot of times I've noticed on like wolves and dogs like that, that like their muzzle tends to be a little bit lighter. Whoops, this is darker. Shoot. Well, I'm going to just have to do the underside a little bit. Now I'll just blend it into a lighter one. Where is my lighter one? That's 4. Darn it. We'll go with this. Hiring a person to clip a video, they got to be scamming you. I don't know what that means. Clip a show? Hopefully this looks a little less like he's got a mustache and a little bit more like he simply has a lighter colored area around there. I'll still be doing that. Your videos are amazing, edited. Hiring someone to do that for you would not be cheap. No, because I would want to, if I hired someone, I would really want them to do a better job than me, not a as good or worse. You know, I wouldn't want to, I only want the quality to improve, at least in general. I know not every time am I going to nail that, but in general, I want comic tropes to get better and better, not just sort of stay the same or stagnate and stuff. It's tricky. It's tricky. Hopefully at least some of you understood what I just did. The wolf looks like Omni-Man. Really? Oh, because of the mustache. Took me a minute there. Okay, because of the mustache. Because of the mustache, she looks like Omni-Man. Omni-Man is a mustached man. Your thoughts on the Department of Truth series? I like what I read. I didn't have enough time to keep up with it right now. I read the first 2 issues. I liked the premise. It seemed cool. I just don't have time for reading everything. I can only read a little bit each month, and some of that's for me, for fun, to keep me excited about comics, and some of it's about trying new things. I just don't always have time to stick with them. And then some of it's about like looking into stuff that's been well or terribly reviewed, like the stuff that's not in the middle, but like, you know, tends to be on one extreme or the other. Yeah, I'll have to find something sort of like a modern comic to discuss sometime soon, though, since like it's probably been a little bit since I've talked about a super modern, like, you know, current book that's out. I do kind of like the idea. It's not super modern now, but like I do like that suggestion of like reviewing Dan Slott's run. But that's, again, like imagine, you know, it's easy enough for me to go, hey, I read this, I know what I want to say about it, and talk for 20 to 25 minutes about, you know, like 10 years worth of comics. But then somebody has to go in and find the appropriate image for, like, you know, every minute or so, or really less than a minute, you know, 20 to 30 seconds worth out of like 10 years worth of comics. That's so many comics to go through. So I don't know if I'll ever really be able to hand that stuff off. And I can understand why there are channels talking about comics that just explain, you know, an issue or a 5-issue arc. that's a much lighter lift than, right now I'm talking about Berserk. And even then, I focused it on like one arc out of Berserk, but talk a little bit about some of the other stuff. And I had to go through, just hundreds upon hundreds of pages to find the equivalent of dozens of images. It's bonkers. It's really bonkers. Thoughts on the controversial cutscene from Harley Quinn? I guess I get where DC's coming from. I think that they should have lightened up, because the show is clearly they've already allowed an R-rated comedy show. To get squeamish about oral sex seems fairly prudish. But I do also get how they're trying to just sort of not address certain things with main characters. They just, because it is a character that's made for kids. Can it be adapted into more adult drama? Yeah, but at the end of the day, if you think that Batman is for 20 somethings, no, that doesn't really make sense. It can be fun for them, but it's made for kids. It's a power fantasy, and it's ridiculous. It could never really work in real life. Not like Batman is. So I guess I sort of get where DC is coming from as a corporate entity. But it's also sort of well, then why did you allow an R-rated comedy set in that world? Maybe just don't worry about it now. Good morning. Yes, good morning. I like your icon there, Tent. I like your icon very much. Zack Snyder posted a comic image of... and you know what? I don't know for a fact, but I think that Zack may have drawn that image of Batman and Catwoman himself. Not everybody knows this, but Zack Snyder's actually quite a talented artist, and I think he still draws almost all of his own storyboards. That guy's talented enough that if he didn't want to make movies, and... why wouldn't he? He gets paid millions for that. He could probably be a professional comic book artist. So I think he may have drawn that himself. I'm not sure, but I think he may have. Dude's talented. What's your opinion on the lizard's design in The Amazing Spider-Man? I didn't really care for it. I thought it looked cheap. I don't know why. I didn't care for that look in The Amazing Spider-Man. I didn't really care for the Amazing Spider-Man movies, though, to be honest. I wasn't against the actors. I can't really say that. Andrew Garfield's a very talented actress, and of course Emma Stone is fantastic as well. But I didn't really care for the take that Amazing Spider-Man had on all of the material. It just didn't work for me very well. So I was totally okay when it was determined that it would be rebooted with Marvel at the helm. I was like, yeah, I'm ready for that. WB keeps trying to make me like Zack Snyder by accident. Please stop. I would say Zack Snyder is a creative individual. He's made some good stuff. I liked, for instance, it wasn't spectacular or anything, but Army of the Dead was kind of fun. It could have used its premise a little bit more with zombies. It could have used being in Vegas a little bit more. It could have been deeper, but it was still fun enough. It was fine. And I think that his versions of things like 300 and Dawn of the Dead, his remake of that, I think that those were pretty darn good. I didn't really care for things like, his take on Superman and Superman versus Batman. I found it very dour and didn't quite find it heroic enough. It fell short in several areas for me. I'll just leave it at that. But I don't think he's untalented. if that makes sense. I think he's capable of doing things that I can enjoy. I would just personally prefer that he work as the director rather than the screenwriter. I don't think I quite am down with his screenwriting. Anyway, there's my 2 cents on Zack Snyder, unsolicited. I'm sure everyone's fascinated. Some people are auteurs, people that, like, you know, really guide the whole project. Even if they didn't come up with the original premise, they do write it to a version that, like, is appropriate for them. I'm talking about guys like Stanley Kubrick, or even in modern days, you know, maybe a Wes Anderson or a Paul Thomas Anderson, or basically anyone that ends with Anderson. Now, other people should pretty much just stick to one role. Okay. Perfect stream to listen to while lettering. Oh, what do you use to letter, James? I have a lot of respect for lettering. How do you feel about Discovery Channel owning WB and DC Comics? It's fine, I guess. No strong opinion there, personally. People in chat, buy Trickster. Let's see. False Name says, wanted to say, I bought Trickster because of your live stream inking. Absolutely great book with a ton of great stories. Oh, that's so nice of you. I'm definitely very proud to have been involved with that book. I'm glad I got to illustrate a story. And I think that the book as a whole is definitely nice. And I think that that's something I'll always sort of have a little bit of pride in, that I drew a story in a book that got an Eisner nomination and won a bunch of awards in the year that it came out. Like, that was a while back, so it's, you know, I don't want to, like, linger over past glories. But I'm happy. I'm very happy with how that came out overall. I think it was pretty cool. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. Currently trying out Pilot High Tech and Tombow pens. Sure. What do you know about European comic distributor, and what way would the transition to Penguin Random House will affect the local comic shops? Great question, Miguel. That's sort of beyond me. I don't know what the result will be. I just don't know enough about the European distribution market and how stores and shops work there. I know how things work here, but that's about it. And it's been easy to understand how things work here because we just have never had that many distributors, and for a long time we've really only realistically had the one. So it's been a lot easier to understand and follow, but I don't know what things are like abroad. I don't understand how distribution works in Japan. I may know about publishers like Shueisha and Hakushensha, but I don't know how their distribution to stores works. Hopefully there's a YouTuber over there. You know what? I mean, the distribution in Europe. This is something that a YouTuber like Owen Likes Comics or Michaela Laird should consider covering. Because they're both some really knowledgeable comic book YouTubers who live in England. Wow, Glenn Cochran with a really generous super chat, and not even a question, just a generous super chat. Thank you, Glenn. That's really nice. Where do you get your art supplies? A wide variety of sources, honestly. I've got a local art supply store called Artist and Craftsman. I tend to go there for my brush pens, which I go through very rapidly. Sometimes I might get, like a one-off type supply online. Maybe Dick Blick or even Amazon or something. It just depends who has something in stock. And I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that a lot of my art supplies are sort of hand-me-downs from my fiance Chrissy, who's a super talented artist, like better than me. She's a painter, but she always has all sorts of art supplies, and a lot of times she's like, you know what, thought I'd use these more than I do you want them? And so that's like why I often have markers like this, and so she'll sort of hand them over to me. I'm like, yeah, I'll play around with them if you're serious about giving them to me, because there's a lot of value there. We're getting close to at least an initial draft of a fully realized pinup. Maybe I shouldn't have included the Bat Hound, but every image I saw of this character, she was with a Bat Hound, although I didn't see any where she was riding it. Now I say that, and I'm like, you know what, I have a vague recollection of, in the background of Kingdom Come, that she did ride it. So maybe I just made myself a liar as soon as I said that. How about you and Chrissy make a comic one day? I'll never say never. I don't know. She really likes doing her own ideas, she's good at collaborating on little art projects together, but she loves doing her own ideas. So and I like doing my own ideas. So I don't know that we love working side by side, but I don't know if we'd be able to pull off an idea that we're both passionate about doing together. We've done 24-hour comic book day together, as in side by side, but not the same book. We each did our own. So that was cool when she made that. She made her own 24-hour comic book day. It's very silly and funny. An old lady has something called aliveness powder, and she spills it on things like her shoes, and it turns them into animated characters that interact and talk with her. And she just has a very silly day, letting her new living creatures play with her aliveness powder. Aliveness powder, that's hilarious. That's exactly the kind of ridiculousness you should come up with if you ever do 24-hour comic book day. You can't think ahead and pre-plan anything. You just have to go with the flow, let inspiration hit you, and just keep writing and drawing. This might be tricky to answer, but what was the first comic book you remember buying? Oh, I remember what the first one I bought was. It was an issue of Transformers. It was something in the 20s. It had this guy called the Mechanic on the cover. And I was really young, and I was into Transformers, and I didn't really know that there was a Transformers comic, but I saw one at the convenience store. I had some money because at the time I had a paper route, so I used to always have a little bit of spare money with me, and so I started buying them, and I bought them all, but even though I was a fan of Transformers, I sort of was these are only okay. It's interesting. But then I tried, a couple weeks later, there wasn't a new issue of Transformers, but I still wanted to read something like that, get that kind of experience, so I bought an issue of G.I. Joe, which I was into, but not as much at the time. But G.I. Joe was very good. Larry Hama's Larry Hama is a very good writer. I like his work. And there was a good artist on it, and I think the cover was by Mike Zeck, who I love. And so that got me a little more into comics. And then I tried Kraven's Last Hunt, and that definitely was the thing that like got me. I was like, oh wow, Kraven's Last Hunt is amazing. I want to read more comics like this. And so I just kept exploring and finding more stuff. I discovered the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles pretty shortly after that by going to a comic book store. Got a lot of their early back issues because they'd only been going as a comic for like a few years. There hadn't been a cartoon even yet. I got really into Ninja Turtles early on. So yeah, I definitely remember the earliest comics that I bought for myself. And I had a few before that were like given to me, but not many. I had a Smurfs comic and a Winnie the Pooh comic. So I was given those when I was very young, obviously just to like keep me entertained on maybe a car trip or something along those lines. And I think I had an issue of Thing and an issue of Flash. So literally like those were the 4 comics that I had before I bought my own. So I have a very clear memory of that stuff. Yeah, a lot of people saying that Kraven's Last Hunt is good, and I totally agree. I made an episode about it too, because that was a special one for me. That was like, if I'm remembering correctly, J.M. DeMatteis is the writer, Mike Zeck is the artist. His covers are especially impressive but like yeah, the interior artwork by him is gorgeous. Just a great story. Probably my favorite overall Spider-Man story, even though I typically enjoy a more light-hearted Spider-Man that like is funny with the quips and stuff. Kraven's Last Hunt just works. It's really good. It's definitely darker than your typical Spider-Man story, but it's okay. It's good. I think my first comic book was The Atom. Loved the idea of a scientist superhero. Yeah, well, there's lots of them too. I mean, Bruce Banner, Reed Richards, Peter Parker. Excuse me. I guess I just banged out a bunch of Marvel stuff. There's plenty of DC scientists too, but there's a lot of mad scientists in DC, aren't there? I guess there are in Marvel Comics too. The Thinker, the Wizard, the Tinkerer, Doctor Doom, arguably. I am so hungry. I haven't had my dinner yet, so I'm definitely getting a little dizzy here. I think I have low blood sugar right now. So when I finish this little bit of coloring, I'm going to call that a live stream. I'm going to touch up everything else. If anything else, I'm going to be touching that all up in Photoshop. Because I need to fix this hand and probably a little bit of this. I didn't do a very good job on the hands. It's because I'm trying to go so fast. Is anybody else reading Rorschach? No, not reading that one. Sorry. Grimlock did have good stories in the comics. I agree, False Names, because he wasn't the dummy that he was in the cartoon. He was more of like a kind of badass that wanted to be the leader, and eventually, like, kind of just by sheer force of will, did make himself become the leader. They also killed Optimus Prime off pretty early, all things considered, in the comic books. And I did do an episode on that, because the way Optimus Prime dies in the comic books is ridiculous. He literally plays a video game with Megatron, loses the video game, but feels that he kind of cheated, so he kills himself. Because he's like, oh, I didn't win honorably. It's like, dude, that's still a game at the end of the day. And this is real life. Like, you're willing to leave the world at the mercy of Megatron because you lost a video game? And on top of that, a computer programmer who designed that game downloaded Optimus Prime's whole brain on a 3.5-inch floppy disk. Come on now. So there we go. I'm going to do a little bit more work on this, but that's the gist of what I've drawn tonight. You guys have been great. Thank you for the super chats, of course. Thank you for the questions, and overall, just thanks for the company, because I had to get this done, and you guys made it a lot easier than if I was just drawing this in the hot heat by myself. So, thank you. I appreciate that. If you are a Patreon subscriber or a YouTube member for Comic Tropes at least the $2 level or above, or $1.99, I will have the Berserk episode finished very soon, and you will get early access to that. I will be uploading that for those people, and then eventually, of course, I always let everybody see it, but they get to see it first. Oh, wow. Seed Hill, all the way from Scotland. It was wonderful talking to everybody. How old were you when you drew the first comic book scene or character? Young. Real young. I have comic strips with a guy I created called Googly Guy. Like, as soon as I could hold a pencil in my hand, I was drawing versions of comics. And I wasn't reading comic books, but I guess I read comic strips, and I sort of got the gist of the idea. I did an episode on this channel. I did a 60-page Transformers comic when I was literally 10 years old. It's crazy. It's a pretty funny episode if you're ever like looking for something to pass the time. But I'm going to take off, guys. I wish I could keep talking, but I really do. I need to eat, like, pretty badly. And I'm going to do some more editing because I've got about 30 minutes before Loki starts. And then I'll probably keep editing while I watch that. And then I've got work in the morning. But you guys have been amazing. So thank you so much. I sincerely mean that. I'm going to take off. But, wow, good night from Korea. So many foreign countries here. That's awesome. You guys are wonderful. It means a lot to me that you're here following. It really does. And I'm going to have some content for you very, very soon. So thank you for your patience. That'll be up soon. Take care. Keep reading comics.